It was a seemingly ordinary day when the first cracks appeared in my marriage. I had been married to Lisa for nearly 12 years, and we had built a life together, a home, careers, and 2 wonderful kids, Sarah and Lucas. Everything felt steady, predictable, comfortable. Then came the neighbor. His name was Eric, a man who, at first glance, seemed like any other suburban dad. He lived just 2 doors down with his wife, Beth, and their teenage daughter. We shared casual nods when mowing our lawns or picking up the mail, and occasionally, we'd chat at neighborhood barbecues. Nothing out of the ordinary. But over time, I started noticing things. Lisa, who had always been friendly but not overly social, seemed to linger in conversations with Eric. She laughed a little too easily at his jokes, brushed her hair back when he was around, a subtle signal I'd never seen her use with anyone else. I brushed it off as harmless. Surely, I was just overthinking it. The first real warning sign came one afternoon when I came home early from work. Lisa wasn't in the house, and neither were the kids, who were supposed to be with her. Her car was in the driveway, but no sign of her anywhere inside. I stepped out onto the porch, scanning the neighborhood, and that's when I saw it, her silhouette, framed in the living room window of Eric's house. I stood there, frozen. My heart thudded in my chest, and an icy realization crept into my veins. But instead of confronting her then and there, I turned back to the house. I needed to think. To observe. To confirm my suspicions before I acted. And so began the quiet unraveling of my life as I knew it. But I would make sure that when it all came to light, I wouldn't be the one left in pieces. After that day, my mind was a whirlwind of doubt and denial. Was I imagining things? Was I reading too much into a momentary glimpse through a window? I told myself to let it go, but the image of Lisa in Eric's house stuck with me, refusing to fade. A few days later, I casually asked her about her day over dinner. "You were home this afternoon, right?" I said, slicing into my steak. "What did you and the kids get up to?" She didn't even flinch. "Oh, I just caught up on some chores while they napped," she replied smoothly, her smile betraying no hint of unease. "It was quiet." Lies. I knew where she'd been. And if she could lie so easily about that, what else was she hiding? My appetite vanished. Over the next few weeks, I became hyper-aware of every interaction Lisa had with Eric. They were subtle, almost imperceptible if you weren't looking for them. The way her gaze lingered a second too long during casual exchanges, the faint blush that crept up her neck when he cracked a joke. I told myself I was being paranoid, but the doubt gnawed at me, relentless. I started noticing patterns. On days when I worked late, Eric's wife, Beth, was often out running errands or at her fitness class. Lisa's car, meanwhile, stayed parked in our driveway. I began to wonder, was there something going on behind the walls of his house when no one else was watching? That's when I decided I needed proof. I took a few days off work without telling Lisa. I left the house each morning as usual, dressed for the office, but instead of heading to my job, I parked on a side street where I could see Eric's house. I waited. Watched. On the second day, I saw her. Lisa, walking casually up Eric's driveway and slipping inside his front door. No hesitation. No glances over her shoulder. Like she belonged there. My stomach churned, and my hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly they ached. She stayed inside for nearly 2 hours before emerging, looking as calm as if she just spent the afternoon folding laundry. I didn't confront her that night. Or the next. I needed more. This wasn't just suspicion anymore, it was real. And I was going to catch her in the act. Once I was sure of Lisa's routine, I put my plan into motion. Catching her walking into Eric's house wasn't enough. I needed undeniable evidence. I needed something that she couldn't explain away with half-hearted excuses or charming lies. I purchased a set of discreet, high-resolution cameras online and spent the next few days testing them. They were tiny, designed for covert surveillance, and could be controlled remotely. I knew exactly where they would go, Eric's living room, where I had seen her silhouette that first afternoon. The layout of his house worked in my favor. His windows were almost always cracked for ventilation, and they didn't have any visible security cameras. One evening, under the cover of darkness, I made my move. I parked a block away, dressed in black, and approached Eric's house with quiet determination. His family wasn't home, Beth's car wasn't in the driveway, and their teenage daughter was away at college. I installed the cameras quickly, one in the corner of the living room and another in the kitchen. They were virtually invisible, blending seamlessly into the fixtures. As I worked, my mind raced with conflicting emotions: anger, humiliation, heartbreak. But beneath it all was a cold, calculated determination. By the time I returned home, Lisa was already in bed. I stood in the doorway of our room, watching her sleep peacefully, unaware of the storm about to come. The next morning, she kissed me goodbye as I left for work, the same practiced smile on her lips. I forced myself to return the gesture, though the act felt like swallowing broken glass. That afternoon, while sitting in my parked car a few streets away, I opened the app linked to the cameras. The feed came to life, showing Eric's pristine living room. I waited, watching the empty space with a patience I didn't know I possessed. Then, like clockwork, Lisa appeared. She entered through the front door, her expression relaxed and her movements unhurried. Moments later, Eric joined her. They laughed together as he handed her a glass of wine, their body language far too intimate for mere neighbors. I recorded everything. When she returned home that evening, I acted as if nothing had happened. She made dinner, chatted about her day, and played with the kids like she always did. But every word she spoke felt hollow. I was barely listening. My mind was already fixated on the next step. I wasn't just going to confront her. I was going to destroy the facade she had built, piece by piece. And when I was done, there would be no coming back. The cameras became my lifeline, my source of truth in a world that had crumbled around me. Over the next week, I watched hours of footage. Lisa visited Eric's house multiple times, sometimes for brief, casual encounters, other times staying for hours. Their interactions left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. It was all there, the smiles, the laughter, the stolen glances that spoke volumes. And worst of all, the ease with which they moved around each other, like this had been going on for far longer than I had suspected. Each recording felt like another nail in the coffin of our marriage. But I didn't break. Not yet. It was during one of these routine visits that I saw something that made my blood run cold. Lisa sat on Eric's couch, clutching a small white stick in her hand, a pregnancy test. My chest tightened as I watched her show it to Eric, her face a mixture of nervousness and something that looked disturbingly like joy. He grinned and wrapped his arms around her, whispering words I couldn't hear. I stared at the screen, frozen. Pregnant? Was this really happening? My thoughts spiraled into chaos, but one thing became clear: this wasn't just an affair anymore. It was a full-blown betrayal, one that threatened to tear my entire life apart. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in the dark living room, playing the footage over and over again, letting the reality sink in. She was carrying his child. A child that would grow up alongside our own kids. The audacity, the sheer cruelty of it, left me seething with anger. The next day, I called in sick to work. I couldn't focus on anything except my growing plan for revenge. I didn't want to just end the marriage. I wanted to leave a mark so deep that neither Lisa nor Eric could ever recover. And I knew exactly how to do it. The plan took shape in my mind over the course of a sleepless night. I wasn't just going to confront Lisa. I was going to make her face the weight of every lie, every betrayal, in the most devastating way possible. And Eric? He wouldn't walk away unscathed either. They had turned my life into a farce, and I intended to repay them in kind. The first step was simple: arrange for the kids to stay with my brother Sam. I called him that morning, explaining that I needed a few days to sort out some things at home. He didn't ask questions, just assured me that Sarah and Lucas would be welcome anytime. Next, I gathered the materials I needed to execute my plan. The footage from the cameras was already saved on an external hard drive, along with the most damning clips stitched into a single, incriminating video. I made copies and backed them up to multiple locations. There would be no way for anyone to claim this was fake or fabricated. Then came the final, most critical piece, gaining access to Eric's home one last time. I waited for a day when I knew he and Lisa would both be out. She had an afternoon yoga class, and he was scheduled to attend a meeting at his daughter's school. Timing was everything. That day, I parked a block away and approached Eric's house like a shadow. The cameras I had installed were still functional, giving me access to his empty living room. I slipped inside through the side door, which I knew from previous observations was rarely locked. It took less than an hour to complete my work. I set up a secondary camera in Eric's living room, this one connected to a portable monitor. Then, I loaded the damning video onto a USB drive and plugged it into his TV. All it would take was the push of a button to play the footage. When I left, my heart was pounding, not with fear, but with a strange mix of adrenaline and cold satisfaction. The trap was set. That evening, Lisa acted like everything was normal. She kissed me on the cheek when I came home, asked about my day, and even suggested we watch a movie after the kids went to bed. The hypocrisy of it all made my skin crawl, but I played along, knowing that her facade was about to crumble. By the time we went to bed, I had made up my mind. The next day would be the day. I would set everything into motion, and when it was over, there would be no doubt about where we stood. The morning of my reckoning started like any other. Lisa hummed a cheerful tune while making breakfast, completely oblivious to what was about to unfold. I played my part perfectly, kissing the kids goodbye as they left with Sam and giving Lisa a smile as I stepped out the door for work. But I didn't go to work. I parked a few streets away, watching the house from a distance, waiting for the pieces to fall into place. Lisa's car pulled out of the driveway around 11 a.m., heading straight for Eric's house. Just as I expected. I waited until she had been inside for about 10 minutes before I made my move. I parked near Eric's house, walked up to his front door, and used the spare key he kept hidden under a fake rock in the garden. I let myself in without a sound. My hands didn't shake. My heart didn't race. I was calm. Cold. The secondary camera I'd installed was already recording, capturing the living room from a perfect angle. On the TV screen, I loaded the video I'd prepared, the one that showed every moment of her betrayal. Then, I set the remote on the coffee table, its power button aimed at the screen. I walked back out as quietly as I'd entered, locking the door behind me. I knew I wouldn't be there to witness their faces when they saw it, but I didn't need to be. The results were inevitable. Back in my car, I opened the camera app on my phone. The live feed showed Lisa and Eric sitting close on the couch, laughing about something. Their comfort with each other, their ease, sent a wave of disgust through me. I tapped the remote control on the app, activating the video. The screen flickered, and the laughter stopped. Eric reached for the remote on the coffee table, probably thinking the TV had turned on by accident. Then, the video began to play. The first scene showed Lisa walking into Eric's house, smiling as he welcomed her inside. The footage was clear, undeniable. The laughter faded into silence as the reality of what they were watching began to sink in. Lisa's face turned pale, her lips moving as if to explain, but there was no sound. I couldn't hear their words, and I didn't need to. The next clips played out like a damning montage, Lisa holding the pregnancy test, their embrace, their intimate conversations. It was all there. And by the time the video ended, Eric's head was in his hands, and Lisa looked as if she might collapse. I closed the app, satisfied. It was done. With the video playing in Eric's living room, I knew their world was imploding. But I wasn't there to bask in their shock. I had one final move to make. I drove home, my hands steady on the wheel. Lisa's car wasn't in the driveway, as expected. Inside, the house was eerily quiet. I walked through the living room and into the kids' bedrooms, where I'd already packed their essentials. Their bags were ready, tucked neatly by the door. I moved methodically, checking every detail. The house was pristine, the kind of clean that hides a mess just below the surface. On the coffee table in the living room, I placed an envelope addressed to Lisa. Inside was a copy of the footage, along with a brief, scathing note. Lisa, I know everything. By the time you return, the kids and I will be gone. You can explain this to your lover, and to everyone else who matters to you. Do not contact me unless it's through my lawyer. I'll be filing for divorce immediately. Satisfied, I left the envelope in plain view and glanced around the house one last time. This had been my home, a place filled with memories of laughter, birthdays, and quiet nights with the family I thought I had. Now, it felt like a mausoleum, a shrine to a life that had been a lie. I grabbed the kids' bags, loaded them into the car, and drove to Sam's house. The kids greeted me with excited hugs, oblivious to the storm I was keeping from them. I gave Sam a brief explanation, sticking to the essentials. Lisa and I are done. I'll be staying here for a while with the kids. I'll explain more when I can. He didn't ask questions, just nodded and gave my shoulder a reassuring squeeze. That evening, as the kids played in the backyard, I sat by the window, waiting. I didn't have to wait long. Lisa's frantic calls started pouring in just before 6 p.m. I didn't answer. The voicemails began piling up, her voice going from confused to panicked to desperate. Please call me back. I can explain. It's not what it looks like. The words were almost laughable in their futility. Then came the texts. Where are you? I just got home, and you're gone. What is this video? Why would you do this? Please talk to me. Don't do this to the kids. I ignored them all, my phone buzzing relentlessly as I sat in the quiet of Sam's living room. Each message was another thread unraveling her carefully constructed lies. And the best part? She didn't even know where I was. By the time night fell, her messages had slowed to a trickle. I knew she was still scrambling, still trying to make sense of what had happened. But it was too late. I had made my move, and now, the pieces were falling exactly as I had planned. The next morning, I woke to a dozen missed calls and texts from Lisa. Her messages had taken a turn from desperation to outright panic. I can't believe you did this. You humiliated me. Please, we need to talk. I'll explain everything. Eric's wife found out. He's blaming me for everything. I read each one with cold detachment, the chaos they reflected only confirming that my plan had worked. She was drowning in the consequences of her actions, and I felt no obligation to throw her a lifeline. It didn't take long for the fallout to spread. By midday, Beth, Eric's wife, called me. Her voice shook with a mix of anger and grief. Did you know? She demanded. How long have you known about them? Long enough, I said, my tone flat. I'm sorry you're finding out this way, but you deserve the truth. Beth broke down then, sobbing so hard that her words came out garbled. He denied it, until I showed him the video. Now he says it was all a mistake, that it didn't mean anything. The absurdity of Eric's excuse made me laugh bitterly. A mistake that lasted for 2 years? I said. Come on, Beth. You and I both know better. She sniffled, trying to regain composure. What are you going to do now? File for divorce, I said without hesitation. And make sure Lisa never forgets what she's done. Beth didn't respond, but I could hear the weight of my words sinking in. We were both casualties of their selfishness, and now we were left to pick up the pieces of their destruction. That evening, Lisa showed up at Sam's house. I saw her pull into the driveway through the window, her face pale and strained as she climbed out of the car. She rang the doorbell, but I didn't move. Sam answered, stepping outside and closing the door behind him. What are you doing here, Lisa? He asked, his voice firm. I need to see him, she pleaded. I need to talk to him. Please, Sam. He doesn't want to see you, Sam said flatly. You should go. Sam, please. He has the kids. Her voice cracked, and she began to cry. I need to see my children. They're fine, Sam said, his tone softening slightly. They're with their father. That's all you need to know right now. I stayed out of sight, listening as she sobbed, begging to come inside. But Sam didn't budge. After a few more minutes, she left, defeated. When he came back inside, he gave me a look that was equal parts sympathy and approval. "She's a mess," he said, shaking his head. "I don't know how you stayed calm through all of this." I didn't respond. It wasn't about calm, it was about clarity. I had seen Lisa for who she truly was, and there was no going back. 2 days later, Lisa's lawyer contacted me. The message was simple: she wanted to discuss custody arrangements and attempt mediation before I filed for divorce. I agreed to meet, but on my terms. There would be no reconciliation, only closure. We met at the lawyer's office, a neutral space where emotions could only stretch so far. Lisa sat across from me, her face a mix of anger and desperation. Her lawyer began by suggesting shared custody, emphasizing the importance of maintaining stability for the children. I listened, unmoving. When they finished, I pulled out the USB drive containing the footage and placed it on the table. "This is the stability you're referring to," I said coldly. "Lisa, do you want me to play this here, or should we let the judge see it first?" Her face crumpled, her lawyer's expression shifting to alarm. "What is this?" the lawyer asked. "Proof," I said. "Proof of everything she's done. Proof that she has no regard for our marriage, our family, or the truth. If you think for 1 second that I'm going to settle for shared custody, you're delusional." Lisa leaned forward, her voice trembling. "Please don't do this. I made a mistake, a terrible mistake, but I love the kids. Don't take them from me. You took yourself from them," I snapped. "Every time you walked into his house, you chose him over them. Over me." Her tears flowed freely now, but they didn't move me. I turned to her lawyer. "I'm filing for full custody. If she fights me on this, I'll make sure the court sees every second of that video." The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, clearly aware of the uphill battle they faced. "Mr. Miller," he began cautiously, "surely there's room for compromise here. For the children's sake." "The children's sake?" I repeated, my voice icy. "They are my only concern. And I'll do whatever it takes to protect them from this mess she's created." Lisa sobbed openly now, but I remained stoic. I stood, sliding the USB drive back into my pocket. "This meeting is over. You'll hear from my lawyer." As I left the office, I felt an odd mixture of triumph and emptiness. The confrontation had gone exactly as I'd planned, but there was no satisfaction in it. The damage was done, and nothing could undo the betrayal. Back at Sam's house, I found the kids playing in the yard. Their laughter was a reminder of what truly mattered, what I was fighting for. I knelt down, hugging them tightly as they ran to greet me. "Daddy, are we staying here forever?" Lucas asked, his wide eyes full of innocence. "No, buddy," I said, my voice soft. "We're going to have a new home soon. Just you, me, and Sarah." "How does that sound?" He grinned, wrapping his arms around me. "As long as you're there, it'll be the best home ever." His words hit me harder than anything Lisa had said. They were my anchor, my reason for pushing through the wreckage of our shattered lives. The custody battle was brutal, but it ended exactly how I expected. With the video evidence, testimonies from neighbors who had seen Lisa frequenting Eric's house, and even Beth's reluctant cooperation, the court ruled in my favor. I was granted full custody of Sarah and Lucas, while Lisa was given limited, supervised visitation. The day the decision was finalized, Lisa didn't show up in court. Her lawyer read a brief statement, claiming she was too emotionally distraught to attend. I didn't care. For me, the fight was over. I had what mattered most, my children, and I could finally begin to rebuild. But I wasn't done with Eric. I'd kept one final ace up my sleeve, waiting for the perfect moment to play it. His wife, Beth, had filed for divorce shortly after learning about the affair, and word had spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. Eric had become a pariah, his once charming persona now tainted by the truth. Using the contact information I'd found during my earlier surveillance, I sent the footage to Eric's boss. He worked as a manager at a local company, where his reputation as a family man had been a key part of his professional image. Within a week, I heard through the grapevine that he'd been let go. The fallout of his actions had finally reached his career. The final blow came when Beth called me a month later. "He's moving out," she said, her tone exhausted but relieved. "Says he needs a fresh start somewhere else." "Good," I said simply. "It's more than he deserves." As for Lisa, she tried to rebuild her life, but the damage was too extensive. She moved into a small apartment across town and began attending therapy, though she still sent the occasional message begging for forgiveness. I never responded. My silence was the only answer she would ever get. Months passed, and life began to feel normal again, or as normal as it could be after everything. The kids and I moved into a new house, one far away from the memories of betrayal. We created new routines, new traditions. It wasn't always easy, but it was ours, and that made it enough. One evening, as I tucked Sarah and Lucas into bed, Sarah asked a question that stopped me in my tracks. "Daddy, do you still love Mommy?" I hesitated, searching for the right words. "I'll always care about her because she gave me you and Lucas," I said finally. "But sometimes, love changes. And that's okay." She nodded thoughtfully, satisfied with the answer. As I kissed her forehead and turned out the light, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The betrayal had broken me, but it hadn't destroyed me. And in the end, I came out stronger, with the people who truly mattered by my side. Lisa and Eric's choices had shattered our lives, but they didn't define our future. That, I realized, was mine to build. And I wasn't looking back.